Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Toth. I'm a Senior Vice President for Public Policy at Rex Homes, and I am very pleased to be joined this afternoon by economist Ben Harris and a colleague of mine, Chris Holloman. Ben is an economist who consults with Rex. He is the founder and principal of Cherrydale Strategies and a professor at the Kellogg School of Management. Ben is also a veteran of Washington, D.C. policy circles, where he has served in a variety of capacities on Capitol Hill and in the White House, where he served as the chief economist for Vice President Joe Biden. Ben, great to see you today. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. And also very pleased to be joined by my colleague, Chris Holloman, who works for Rex Homes. Chris, like myself, is also based in Austin, Texas. He is the director of analytics at Rex and a senior data scientist. Chris, great to see you. Great to be with you today also.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, so many questions right now coming from communities across our country about housing, about the housing market, about how COVID-19 and the pandemic is affecting homeowners. So I thought we could dive in and drill down into some of these trends to try to understand exactly what's happening and where we may be a couple months out, if possible. First, Ben, we'll start with you and talk about some of the overarching kind of general economic trends and how they affect housing. I think what we're seeing is just a lot of concern about wages, concern about retirement, concern about the general health of the economy. How is COVID-19 affecting the real estate market?
So if we'd been having this discussion back in December or January, it'd be a very different discussion, obviously. You know, if you'd asked me, how's the housing market look in December, I could say with a fair amount of certainty and confidence, there are a few different things which are driving the housing market, and it's generally considered to be healthy overall. One is that we have low unemployment. Almost everyone who wants a job has one. Wages are increasing slowly, but they're still on the upswing. We've got limited supply, so prices are growing at a pretty healthy rate. From around 4% per year since 2012. We'll have had about 7 or 8 years of pretty healthy recovery overall in the housing market. And while conditions vary from market to market, nationally, the combination of low unemployment, some wage growth, and historically low interest rates mean that the market's pretty healthy. You know, you never want it to get too hot, and you never want it to get too cold. And the housing market was looking pretty good. I participate in this survey of economists who sort of forecast the housing market. And so not only was it pretty healthy for about 7 or 8 years, but we're also sort of expecting a relatively healthy market going forward. A lot of economists predicted around 2 to 5% annual increases in housing prices. So nothing too crazy, but still positive. A lot were asked, do you see the risks on the upside or the downside? So do you see a steep decline in housing prices on the horizon? Many did not. And other economists were asked about, do you see anxiety rising? Do you see people worrying about being able to sell their homes or not? And very few people saw, I think only 4% of economists saw an increase in anxiety in 2020. So overall, we sort of expected this health to continue. Obviously, everything has changed, and there's quite a bit of uncertainty. So it's hard to say with any certainty what's going on. But right now, obviously, people are prohibited from leaving their homes in some states, and many don't want to, even if they're allowed to. Many are worried about their jobs. So we saw 3.3 million Americans last week, by far a record high, apply for unemployment insurance. We'll probably see another 3 to 4 million this week. So you've got 7 million more people who are out of work than they were 2 weeks ago. And there's just a lot of uncertainty. And so a lot of people balk at sort of a major life decision like buying a home when there's so much uncertainty. Now, that being said, this could all pass relatively quickly. And it's not like 2008 where we were in for a prolonged recession. And there's a chance that after 1 or 2 months, we can sort of go back to business as normal. And some small businesses will have a hard time recovering. The stock market probably will not be back up to where it was, but there will be sort of a sense of normalcy, maybe. I don't know, and no one knows. So this could get back on track, or it could not get back on track. But right now, we're sort of in a period of extreme uncertainty.
So Ben, you described kind of the pre-COVID-19 conditions in the housing markets as almost like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, kind of right in that sweet spot. Is there any way in which homeowner equity right now could provide sort of a shot in the arm in the economy? Or if we're able to get out of this current situation, could homeowner equity provide a shot in the arm to the economy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we look at the type of businesses that are maybe changed for good, we really don't know. We don't know if cruises will ever recover. We don't know if people will ever want to go sit in restaurants the way they did before. This isn't to say that restaurants are dead, because that's crazy, but maybe we've just sort of become accustomed to takeout in ways that we weren't before, or maybe we're more scared of going on a cruise like we were before. One of the nice things about home ownership, it does have this sort of enduring quality to it. Everyone will always look for homes to live in. And as I think we'll get to in a little bit, there are ways to buy and sell homes that don't always require you physically being there. And so when we look at how business models might change, and we look at how restaurants might do business differently, we look at how doctors might do business differently, we might see more telework, we might see that seep into the realty market. And there's, I think, a pretty decent chance that people will shift the way they're doing business in a whole host of industries. The second has to do with investment. And I think for a long time, for a couple of years, a lot of economists and a lot of market watchers were concerned about the stock market maybe becoming a bit overbought, and thought that maybe the run-up in prices was not reflected with fundamentals. It's only a slight exaggeration to say that Americans really only invest in two things: stocks and their homes. And if stocks have become a little bit less attractive, maybe people will want to start investing in their homes a bit more, and just finding the stability in homes that they're not finding in stocks right now.
Great. Well, Chris, we're going to shift over to you in just a moment. But Ben, one more question, because you touched on it in the first part of the last answer. How do you see innovation helping to assist or enhance the real estate market as we go forward from now?
So there's a lot of uncertainty, and the big uncertainty is how people will continue to feel about face-to-face contact with other human beings. And we don't know if this will have changed us for good, or whether or not it will have changed us temporarily. But I think we're getting used to doing business online in ways we weren't before. You've seen this explosion of Zoom. So many people are teleworking, and it feels like sort of a moment. Advances don't always happen linearly in economies. They happen stepwise. You see something will change, and there'll be this big boost of innovation and changes that happen really quickly. This is obviously a national tragedy and is terrible in so many different ways. But COVID-19 could mean that we are on the cusp of a new way of doing business, and that we're just used to doing business online in ways that we weren't before. And so that opens the door for innovation in real estate, in addition to a whole host of other industries. And the basic premise is, look, maybe we'll get comfortable buying and selling a home without physically being present. And the tools for showing homes have changed so much over the past few years. And I know you guys will talk about it in a second, but you can get a great idea about what a home is, about the product you're buying, without physically being there to see it. Now, some businesses don't allow for this type of adaptation. You can't go to the dentist unless you're physically present. But when it comes to buying and selling a home, there is real promise there that innovation could permanently change the way we're doing business.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben. And let's turn to you now, Chris. As stated before, Chris and I are colleagues here at Rex Homes. Chris, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what we do at Rex, how Rex is made for this moment, how Rex is set up to match buyers and sellers, and also tell us how you analyze some of the market trends that Ben touched on. Ben touched on some shifts in demand, potentially permanent shifts in demand. How is Rex right now looking at some of these market trends, or how are you at Rex as the director of analytics looking at some of these market trends?
Yeah, sure. So just broad overview, Rex is a residential real estate market. Our goal is to connect buyers and sellers who are selling their homes. We want to make the process fast, convenient, and inexpensive. One of the biggest things about our value prop is that we don't charge nearly as much as our competitors. So people are able to keep more of that equity that you talked about in their pocket when they sell their home, and buyers are able to get their new home at a lower price. And the other big differentiator is that we use technology in every aspect of our business. And this is really a great time for that. Technology is the foundation of the way that we stay in touch with our customers. We have tools in place that help people know at any moment sort of how their home sale is progressing. What's the stage of my showings? What's the stage of my escrow? Those kinds of things. And how am I moving toward completing this transaction? And then we talked a little bit about using technology for buyers to be able to virtually tour homes. Advances like 3D scans of homes where it feels like you're in the home even if you're not there. And connecting all the different pieces of the way that people shop for homes. So the way that people look at homes has changed from 10 years ago, where you would rely on a buyer's agent to come to you with a list of homes that fit your needs from what they could tell from the MLS, the multiple listing service, and to then put you in their car and drive you around to those homes to look at them. These days, what people do is they first go on Zillow and they maybe monitor the market for a couple of months, or they go on homes.com. And what we want to do is make it seamless for them to move from those ways of searching for a home to finding a home, hopefully on the Rex website, where they can directly make an indication of interest and say, hey, I want to learn more about this home and make an offer. You asked a little bit about the way that we use data to make all this happen. We keep a close eye on what's happening on the MLS. Traditional brokerages still constitute the biggest part of the industry, and we want to make sure that we are outpacing the MLS and that we're growing in ways that make those who are selling their homes with us know that they have access to a really big buyer pool and growing every day. We use machine learning technology to connect buyers and sellers. We seek out the right buyers for a home who are the most likely people to want to see a home and make an offer on it. So we cut out a whole lot of the work of having people go to a home that aren't really interested. They're just, looking. We want sellers to know we're bringing people who are ready to make an offer.
Wonderful. And something that Ben really talked about earlier was just that we're in a period of extreme uncertainty right now. But Chris, you and I have talked about the stability of Rex's platform at other periods of time. So could you just tell us a little bit today about that stability in terms of how Rex has been able to execute and what that may tell us about the current situation?
Yeah, definitely. We are in almost 30 markets at this point, and we monitor each of those markets separately. The way that a downturn hits Riverside, California is not the same way that a downturn hits Austin, Texas. And we want to make sure that we are thinking about those differences, for each of our customers separately. If I could share something from my screen really quickly, just to show you trends here, I'm going to share with you a picture of what our business has looked like against the MLS over the past 3 years in one of our markets that we expanded into, which is the Riverside market. What you're looking at on the graph there on the left side, you can see the scale of MLS listings. The blue line is MLS listings over time, and you can see a really strong seasonal cycle where we have really big peaks up here in the July timeframe, and then falling off to a low at the end of the year, following the same pattern year after year as we would expect. And then the orange line is what's happening with Rex, and you can see that we've had very stable increases. So one of the interesting things is that we're not as affected by the upswings and downswings in the market at this point as the MLS. Now, of course, we did have a slow December, but we ramped right back up in January this year, faster than the MLS ramped up over the same time period. So even though we do have some, we do follow the seasonal cycle, we just don't get as strong sort of lifts and falls as the MLS market does right now because of our strong growth.
Wonderful. And Chris, what would you tell us about how to think about the challenges that buyers and sellers are having right now? If it's a potential buyer who wants to buy a home or a potential seller who wants to sell a home, what does the data tell us, or the way you're analyzing the data, what does that tell us about some of the challenges that buyers and sellers are facing now, and maybe the ways for potential buyers and sellers to solve some of these problems?
Yeah, it's a really, I'm not going to lie, it's an unprecedented time that we're in. And so it's hard to make any real forecasts of the way things are going to go in the future. What we have seen so far is really good adoption of the technology that we're putting out there. So for example, on the seller side, certainly the number of people who are contacting us has trended down since COVID-19 started making people stay in their homes. But what we found is that the people who are contacting us are just as serious or more serious about getting their home on the market than what we had seen in the past. And they're really willing to adopt technology. And what they're seeing is that it works well for them. We do what we normally would go to somebody's home and meet with them in person. We're doing that online and having people talk us through what's in their house. We investigate what their finishes look like and what possible, detractors or additions to value look like. And then we help them get their home online as fast as possible and start finding buyers. On the buyer side, people are able to, I already mentioned, that people have adopted technology for a long time to screen homes through Zillow or through homes.com. We're adding another stage to that. Maybe you find 10 homes that you're interested in on Zillow. A few of those are Rex homes. We let you tour those virtually, and then no one, maybe not no one, but most people aren't going to buy a home without actually stepping foot in it. So once you've narrowed it down to those 2 or 3 that you're really interested in, Rex will, make it work so that you can actually go and visit those, whether they're Rex homes or not. So one of the advantages to our company is we act as a, full-scale real estate residential brokerage where we will show you whatever homes you're interested in.
Thank you for that perspective, Chris. We'll finish up with you, Ben, and circle back. Hearing what you've heard about the data points that Chris has shared, and putting the uncertainties of the present moment aside, how does some of the innovation that Chris talked about affect the way we should think about economic trends in the real estate market going forward?
So let me just sort of end with some optimism, because I think it's always good to end with optimism. And when it comes to the housing market, I'm fairly optimistic. The first point is around when it comes to technology, and really even just how the housing market, how the realty market works. I think it might be a long time before some Americans are comfortable going back out in groups of 100, like you might see in a restaurant. Certainly some concern around being in an arena with 30,000 other people, maybe watching a baseball game or some other sporting event. But when it comes to buying and selling a home, you're rarely around more than a handful of other people. So I don't think realty will be affected long-term the way some other industries are. The second sort of point of optimism I wanted to bring up is that Americans have never spent more time in their homes than they have these past 3 weeks. I can say that with a fair amount of confidence. And, it may have some people thinking about the product they're living in. And if my commute time triples or goes up fourfold, I'm going to think a lot about, is this the car I really want? And now that Americans are spending so much more time in their homes, I wonder if it'll sort of change the way they value this product versus others. But one thing that Chris said about innovation, I think makes a lot of sense, has to do with familiarity. And a lot of time economists talk about tipping points and network effects. And for every person that tries out this new type of innovation that sort of becomes more accustomed to buying and selling a home this way, they might recommend it to 2 or 3 other people. A lot of people take their financial advice from their social networks. So one person trying it out could then lead to 3 or 4 more being willing to consider it. And just like we all sort of became accustomed to phones over time, and how we became accustomed to email over time, and all technologies are adopted gradually, this could be the push that this industry needs to change. And it doesn't require that many people getting more comfortable with it and then recommending it for it to really catch on.
Wonderful. Well, on that optimistic note, gentlemen, it's been great having this conversation, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Have a good day.
You too.